Hey, Nikori. Hey, Antonio. How are you both doing? Let's do this one first. Good to see you both here. How's it going? Hopefully you're ready for some feedback. I did some prep this time around. I did slight changes to the format as well. So we're kicking it off. Something new. This year? Well, not this year. I guess I did a stream like yesterday as well. No, I'm gonna be like a little bit more organized, right? Let's switch it over. Slight changes, but now I'm gonna kind of keep track of the notes that I make on the right as well. So I'm gonna see if that changes, especially like the written format on the Discord as well. Let's see if that improves it. It does. Let's see. It's good to have you both here. I think we're just gonna dive straight in, right? We're just gonna get started. Let me start with you, Antonio. Sorry for my 100 posts on this project. No, it's all good. I'm only gonna read the last one anyway. So I want to ask about the composition, right? So composition. Oh, I forgot to lock this guy. Hold up. All right. So, number 1, composition. Number 2, any errors and any changes to correct stage or anything that will need to change. Okay, that's a pretty broad question, right? It's also still early on, so I don't know how relevant that is. We're gonna have a look. There's plenty of references. Extra thing you need to know. for the project is that the materials are done in the designer. Created a blueprint for it to be able to change color. I want to talk about that. So the blueprint for the color. Okay, but let's just dive into it. So first topic here. Hello, Snowbat. Good to see you here. Happy to have you. First topic here, composition. Antonio, there's not that much here yet, right? In terms of composition, like we have a house on a plane, and I don't even know if this is like the final sort of view yet. Otherwise, currently it looks fine. You know, like there is some weird stuff happening here where you have like the windows, right? These guys look good, but then, well, okay, I would say I would expect the windows to be higher. You see, because also this one is kind of blocked by like the seat, right? So like the windows do feel like they need to be higher. Also, this frame is currently empty, right? So it doesn't have anything in it just yet, which just looks kind of weird. Like if it's just gonna be this window, then the frame is gonna be stopping here as well, right? Yeah, composition wise, keep on going, right? Because there's not that much yet. Like take it step by step, you know? Be methodical about it. What I will say though, shit, I kind of lost train of thought. Let's just jump to like number 2 here, right? So we have like the blueprint for the color, right? Do you really need that? I'll make a case where you need it, right? So let's say you're working on like a large scene that has like 50, 100 to 1,000 houses, then like a blueprint for color changes would be really interesting, right? Otherwise, like you're gonna be spending time on making a blueprint that is not really useful, right? Like because you could easily just make material instances for that, right? The reason why I bring this up is with a project, right? Especially if there is like an issue with finishing projects, you want to simplify the amount of stuff that you need to do for a project, right? You want to simplify it. You want to make it as easy as possible to get yourself to that endpoint. So when I look at a blueprint for color changes, first of all, it's not going to really be useful, and also like, yeah, it's going to add like technical complexity where you don't need it, right? So set yourself up for the win. Don't make a blueprint for colors. Just use material instances. Like use a material instance for green, use a material instance for red, and use a material instance for blue, and that's it, right? Have them linked to like the same master material, and then you're good. So whenever you just need to, so you've got your master material here, you have your material instance here, like number 1, right? Number 1, and then whenever you need like a new color, you just make like a new material instance. And you keep adding until you have the colors that you need, right? But for this, since you're saying if you're focusing on 2 buildings, yeah, like a blueprint, just cut that out. Like no need for that at all, especially at this point. So save yourself time and just make it in the easiest way possible. That's also what I think, but if I look at the references, they're not that high, and I post other references. Okay. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's because they have like the balcony at the front, right? Okay, if that's the way that they're built, cool. But you're still missing like the top of the frame then, right? I think it would make more sense if you have the top of the frame there as well and it reads like a full window. I think it would be less confusing at that point. Yeah. And pay attention to like all the details as well, right? Like how the frame of the windows is going to connect to the main building. Yeah, pay attention to all those things too. Good to know that blueprints can be used to make it more modular, but not needed unless you're doing a large-scale scene like Tim said. Yeah. It's good to know that you know, for sure. Hi Q! Hi McFell! How you both doing? So yeah, the composition is just... It's good for now. It's pretty... I mean, it's standard, right? It's just like a house in there. Just keep on going. If you're focusing on one building at the moment, right? Which is a great idea, right? Try to think of an idea or like try to think of a way where you could present it without having to do like a bunch of the other stuff too, right? If we go back to one of your previous screenshots, you had Martin's asset pack, right? And you can basically build your building and then have the surroundings filled in by the asset pack, right? That could be an option. That could be a way of doing it as well. And I'm not necessarily talking about buildings, right? I'm also talking about like maybe you could use trees and like the dirt and like the ground and all that stuff, right? And then the building could be yours. So think about a way. You're basically planning for the presentation, right? Already. With the goal of making it easy on yourself. Like, what are the least amount of steps that I need to take to get from like the beginning of the project to the end of the project? That's what you're looking for, without sacrificing the goals that you've set for the project, right? So for this one, I would honestly just focus on the one building and then do the presentation. Fill it up with, like, in this case, Martin Hoff's asset pack, right? So that you have, like, some bits that are filled out. Put that on your portfolio, and if you still want to work on it, keep on working on it, and then slowly build, like, a second house, and build more assets, and build more assets. Until the point where either you have a new scene that you can publish, or to the point where you're done with the project and you want to move on to something different. I kind of call this plan like building in save points, right? Where you're working towards like your first save point. And the save point is where you can publish it to ArtStation and have it look good. So we're kind of building towards that first save point with this kind of strategy. So make it easy on yourself. Don't go into like fancy blueprinting and keep the steps like clear and focus on the project at hand, right? Let's see. Yeah, because where you explain, right? So you're doing materials in Designer. You're also doing the trim sheet for the first time. You're also doing like multiple texture sets on your windows. There's already like a lot of things that you're trying to learn, right? Or improve on. So like anything else, you wanna kind of minimize it. A good rule of thumb, and this is kind of like really sort of, I don't know, it's difficult to sometimes formulate it, right? Is think about like the 80 to 20% rule. In this case, we're applying the 80 to 20% rule, where 80% of it is something that is comfortable, right? So inside of your comfort zone, and then 20% is challenge. according to science, this is the best way to approach like any project, because you're gonna still challenge yourself without burning yourself out, and you can always rely on like the comfortable things in a project to kind of get back the motivation for the project itself, right? So keep this into account when you're thinking about like how much challenge you're gonna build into the project. So planting a pine tree and 2 rocks and using Gaia and all that stuff, exactly. Don't focus on that for now. That's why I brought up what Kyo was asking as well. I was talking about the acid pack from Martin Hoff. He did like a really, really cool like acid pack for Western towns. If someone can link it in the description, that would be awesome. I don't have the link on hand here. But yeah, back to your question, Antonio. If you're planning to do a pine tree and rocks and all that stuff, no. Simple reason for it being is trees are complex. Pine trees, not as much, but you're gonna have to dive into like a whole new technical way of making trees, right? Which can get really complicated. And rocks are like a whole new workflow. So don't do it. Just use the acid pack that Martin has. Fill out the rest of the scene. Once that is done, once you've worked out how to use a trim sheet and you've worked out how to make one building, it becomes way easier to do the next building. And slowly but surely you can like replace things in the scene if you wanted to. But I also have the feeling, and this is normal, right? I also have the feeling that once you did your first house and you did like all the work involved into it, we're probably going to be looking at a different project instead. So again, I'm trying to set you up to work towards that save point where you can say like, hey, look, I'm going to publish this online and I can take it or leave it, right? At that point, you have a choice whether you keep working on it or you move on to something else. But work towards that. Because then at least you have something that you can put on your portfolio at that point. So yeah. Don't add too many challenges. Or too many new things. A better approach is to do a lot of really, a really small project, right? Like you're working with like really small projects that are like hyper focused and allow you to like really focus in on like a skill that you want to learn. And then you move on to like the next thing with a new project, right? And then you keep on building like all the individual skills until you get to a point where the 20% challenge comes from making a big scene, right? Even though you understand like all the individual components, the complexity comes from making a big scene. So you're building towards that with this step, right? Best advice I ever got from you is working towards those save points. Hey, that's awesome, Lloyd. I didn't know that I was such a big hit. Hey, Adam. See that Brad Cullen project of the Wild West? He also done the same thing, and he used megascans to build around, and he focused on building. Yeah. Do it. Do the same thing. Makes total sense. So yeah, last thing here is don't focus on too many new things. Take it step by step, do it methodical, and work towards that save point. Right, and talking about saving my voice, I'm gonna grab some water, be right back. Right. Forgot my water. Cool. Thanks, Antonio. Keep it up. Keep it up. And looking forward to see your next update. Next one in the list, we got Ricardo. Where is your... Here you are. Okay, so Ricardo slightly adjusted your lighting. I want to finish my scene this week. 2 questions for Whip Wednesday is any feedback on the lighting? All right. And what do you think of the current values in the black and white screenshot? Okay. All right. You can already see what I did here, right? So I added like a couple of references that we're going to be pulling from later. But we can see that this is the new one over here and the old one is down here. The reason why I put this comparison up here is because I feel that we lost something when we did the transition to like the new kind of lighting. And I think what we lost is we basically sacrificed contrast, and because we reduced the contrast, we're also killed like a little bit of the mood as well. Because now everything feels more lit, right? And it kind of kills that like eerie atmosphere that you kind of had before. So I think that is worth like rediscovering and like re-exploring like with some of the new good additions, right? Like the new good addition that I think is like the light in the background. I think that is definitely a nice one. I just don't like that like the foreground is like super lit now. Because now everything kind of is, it's like very washed down, right? Like everything kind of has like the same sort of color values and the same sort of tonal value to it. Or at least comparatively to before, right? So what I think you could do is reintroduce like the foreground. So bring this back and then keep what you did in the background because I actually like that. Now, when it comes to balancing, right? I think we can balance it like slightly better where you kind of have your main focal point and then your secondary focal point. I think you've got a really solid base here, right? Because like this one stands out most, and then you kind of have like this one in the back. But right now, obviously, it kind of like this entire area kind of has like the same sort of tone, which is not ideal. So by reducing the foreground, what we're going to do is we're going to make it way clearer that we're looking at point 1 first, and then we're going to go to point 2. And that's it. Like there's going to be like a clear shift in like the clarity of the picture, which is going to be really nice. Yeah, so kind of what we see here as well, right? Like you kind of have like number 1, like a very bright, like this is like overly lit, right? But like you have like a very bright focal point and you have like secondary focal points that are kind of in line with what you're trying to do here. Same kind of vibe here, where you have like 2 pretty bright spots. Yeah, I think introducing the contrast, right? So, I'm gonna bring up something else as well, because the foreground lighting, like by increasing like how lit the foreground is, you're also introducing another issue that you can see is we have like a ghost light here, right? Like we're trying to use like a fill light or a spotlight to like light this area up, but there is nothing in that picture that could actually make sense of where that light is coming from, right? Because this light is not lit, so it's not coming from there, but where else is it coming from? Now, this is still an issue in the older one, but in the older one, it kind of is, it actually does a great job of kind of feeling like it is like a global illumination coming from the other light. It kind of feels like it's just like light spilling over the scene. Even though, looking back at it now, you could probably reduce the amount of light that we're getting here as well. to again, like, add additional contrast, right? One thing that we always should try to do is whenever we add lighting, you should try to physicalize that light as much as you can. So yeah. So make actual lights. You need to like physically represent them in your scene. Because that's always going to feel like way better than trying to just have like a spotlight that's kind of floating in midair, but like no one really sees where the source is coming from, right? Now the stuff in the background is actually pretty good. So we can keep like the background hallway area. I think once we also like reduce the foreground and how lit up it is, I think that's also going to really help with like pulling the attention more towards the back of the scene too. So that's why I kind of want to keep it there. Because I think once we do the additional adjustments, the light in the back is going to have like a bigger impact on the scene, which is good. Yeah. I think let's do like a little bit of an overpaint here, right? That is like our black and white. Let's see. Kind of want to increase that one. We're gonna see. I'm gonna go with like a little bit of a stronger one here. I'm gonna have my brush too big. Right? And then I kind of want to have this like gradient where it kind of like close to where we are. Like it is very dark. And you kind of get pulled into the scene towards like the main focal point. I think we can even play with this more. But like really painting with lighting at this point, right? Yeah, like something more contrasty like that, right? Where to do like a little bit of a comparison. Let me bring out like the other one that we had. I should have saved this one actually, but so now if we do the comparison, right? This is what I'm doing with the scene. This is the way that I'm approaching it. Like I'm also like a big fan of like more contrasted scenes, right? but feel free to tweak this to like your own liking. But something that has like a little bit more oomph and like a little bit more contrast and like pulls you into the right areas. That's what I'm looking for here. If we really, let's see, oh, I want to make it slightly darker because this is where the balancing comes in, right? You want the background to be visible, but you don't want it to be like the first point where we're gonna be looking at. So again, what I'm trying to do is this area first, right? So this is number 1. And then you're kind of led down the hallway to like, I mean, this is what you're trying to do as well. Not that I'm trying to do anything new. But like, I'm really trying to push the values, right? Trying to make it like very clear. Pink. So yeah. Let's see. So that's the lighting, right? And then what do you think of the current values of the black and white screenshot? We kind of had a look at that at the same time, right? Which is pretty nice. I might just add this here. Oh, I did it on the picture. Normally I hate that, but this is actually good. So yeah, this is the way that I would approach it, right? Where you introduce like more contrast. And this is like the before and after of it. That's the way that I would approach the black and white picture. Hey, Bodhi! Oh no, I just misclicked on. Oh, DaVinci Resolve, no. Yeah, that's the way that I would approach it, Ricardo. Nearly there. I love the way that it looked. I think this happens, you know? Like this happens sometimes when we're in the thick of it, we're in the trenches, we're just looking at the artwork. Sometimes we kind of lose track of like the bigger picture. This is also why I'm a big fan of taking like regular or like almost daily screenshots, because it helps you like look back at some of the things that you lost and some of the things that were better in like a previous screenshot, right? It allows you to kind of go back and kind of reflect on like your previous choices and why you made them. Yeah, that would be my tip. Comparing with regular screenshots. I think that would be my little tip. Thank you, Ricardo. We're we're nearly there, you know? Nearly there. I think your plan was to publish it at the end of the week. Let's see. Want to finish my scene this week? Yes, that's awesome. Any other last weeks are welcome as well. And then I want to upload the project to ArtStation this Friday. Yeah, I think the lighting is definitely going to help a lot. What I also would do is, it seems like you kind of have it already, but look into a vignette as well. We're kind of already doing that, like over here, if we really start pushing the contrast, right? So a vignette could really help with that. But if you're just doing it with lighting, you can also do that. Like your scene kind of has like a built-in vignette because of the lighting scenario that you set up. So you could experiment with it. Yeah. Looking forward to see the final result. All right. And then we go to Kotar. And Kotar is currently trying to create one of the entrances of Shadowfell from Baldur's Gate 3. I have no clue. I've not played the game, so I have no context here. We have like a little entrance to Shadowfell under the statue. And then we're going to be looking at going to be looking at some lighting, and most of all, what I want to focus on is because Kotar wants to go for a feeling where everything feels grand and it makes us feel small, which is awesome, right? I kind of love that you have that in mind already. Currently, it's not really coming to fruition as much as you want it to, and there's a couple of things that we can tweak to kind of make that come across better, right? So let's dive into those things. That's why I have these like additional references here, so that we can kind of discuss how to make something feel like a bit more grand. Come on. So, number one is the grand feeling. How do we get there? I love looking at concept art for this. Concept artists have like a knack for this stuff. And I love the way that they approach it. Like they have like a very free thinking spirit when it comes to like iteration and all that stuff, right? Because they don't have to do it in 3D. So I like looking at their work and how, like, if something really approaches like a good scale, I try to replicate some of those things in my scenes as well. Another reference point would also be photography. I learn a lot from photography as well when it comes to like actually looking at the world and like how small I feel compared to it, right? In this case. So a grand feeling. I think what we're currently missing is human scale. Human scale, perspective distortion. We can use that to our advantage as well. And then also, and this is something more that's related to like how you laid out your scene currently. And it's, let's call it like the scene layout. Let's start with the last one, right? Because that's like a little bit more of an ambiguous one. When it comes to the scene layout, what you have chosen for is that we're going down into something, right? And usually when we're going down into something, it elevates us in comparison to whatever we're going down into, right? We're descending into something, which also has the effect of whatever is down into that area where we're going into, it makes it feel small, right? So an easy way to have something feel like big and grandiose is have something that you're looking up to, not down into. So this, what I would do in this case, right? You have like a long staircase leading down. I would honestly flip it upside down and have you go up towards the pedestal, right? And then play around with the proportions of the gate and make it feel like the gate is like towering on top of you, right? So that's the first thing that I would do. It's more of like a big change, right? So that's why I'm bringing it up first. So going up instead of down has like a massive impact on like the feeling that you're trying to recreate. The other thing, perspective. This is something that I like to use myself as well. That's also something that I got from photography too. So this is a photograph of like a very simple object that I took, like a very simple pylon that I took in Greece, right? You can kind of see what's happening, right? If we draw on top of it, you can see what is happening, that at a certain point, like these lines, if you were to continue them, they're going to come together, right? What is happening there is like perspective foreshortening. So at a certain point with like 3-point perspectives, if you have something with like if you have an object with like a perspective distortion and it makes it feel big, is because we're kind of used to looking at big things, and they kind of as they get further away, they get smaller, right? So we can kind of fake that effect by kind of squeezing that perspective in our scenes too, which is kind of what I try to do here, right? Even though like this building is not really that tall, I'm kind of using my lens and like the field of view to kind of make it feel like it's taller than it actually is, which is like a really like I find it like a really interesting tool to be using, right? Obviously, how you use it and how far you go into that perspective distortion, that's up to you. This one is probably like pushed too far, right? But if you go for something more realistic, like you can get some really interesting results. So yeah, use your perspective to your advantage. Use your camera. Use your FOV. All those things can really be helpful, right? And you can do that in the blockout stage already, where you can set up your camera and then you build everything into the frame according to that camera, right? Which is also like a handy trick of like condensing down your scenes too. But you can kind of see what's happening here, right? You have these massive pillars, which are actually quite nice, right? Like they serve as like a great purpose of having something that feels like it's massive. But currently the reason why it doesn't feel massive is because they're just going straight, right? So like the perspective is just kind of flat. And if we then do like a little bit distortion, it doesn't have to be much, but like a little bit of distortion, then we're getting like the feeling of it being impressive, right? If we then start combining that with the scene layout and you're going up and you have like a tall ceiling, right? Which can also help create that impressive kind of feeling where something is towering onto you. I think those are like the tools that we should be using, right? So like perspective distortion. I'll add, I was kind of, so when it comes to the perspective itself, right? When you have a bird's eye perspective, right? Which is when you're flying over the city and you're kind of looking down, you have that kind of perspective. The opposite side is, I was kind of looking at this, but I couldn't really find it before the stream. And I can't remember myself either. It's either like an ant's perspective or like a frog's perspective or something like that, where you are like lower to the ground and then you're looking up, right? It makes things feel like grandiose by nature. What camera settings are you talking about? I already used the focal length to make the scene feel bigger than it already is. Yep, that's a good one. That's a good one. You can do a lot with your focal length by itself. There's already so much. There's only so much you can do with like your focal length, right? I think if you push your focal length to, God, I keep getting confused by this, right? So I'm a very hands-on kind of person when it comes to this stuff. I think when you push your focal length to be, well, when you push your FOV to be higher, right? So you're pushing your focal length to be lower, then you're gonna get that distortion. Because I think, I can't remember which kind of FOV that I use here, but I think it must be like around like 90 to 100 or something like that. Like, I think it's degrees, right? Because that's like your field of view. On this one, I definitely like pushed it past the brink. But also, you can see what I'm doing here, right? Like, my camera is like really low. Like, I'm not even like person height. I'm using like the foreground and like objects that are close to me to my advantage in this case. Cool. And then we have the last one here, which is like human scale. This is always great when looking at concept art. That's why I have this concept art here. I think, save who it was from. Victoria Anda is the concept artist who worked on this awesome piece. I actually collaborated with her on like one of the Forma team challenges, which is like a really interesting happenstance. But yeah, talking about this piece, the reason why I like this piece is because it kind of has some like really interesting kind of concept art tropes, right? But the reason why they're tropes is because they work really well. Obviously, there's some things that we can replicate easily, and there's other things that we can't really do, right? First of all, humans itself, right? Second of all, the birds. Birds in concept art are like such a tool, like such a convenient tool for creating scale and perspective. They're always nice to add. I've never really done that in 3D, but that could be like an option to explore, right? Also creating something that is relatable, closer to the camera, right? This is maybe not such a good example of this, but like you have these like pillars, right? And they're kind of repeated through the scene. So we can kind of imagine how big they are and how big the structure is in comparison to those pillars too. Because that's what we're doing, right? What is eventually happening is that we're always comparing like all the proportions like in our head, right? So when we see like a massive structure like this, and then we see like a small little fella here, then we know like, whoa, this is big, you know? Like this kind of wows us then at that point. However, we don't need to rely on birds or anything like that, right? There's actually like a really interesting example here where you kind of have the same thing happening, right? We have like a bunch of candles, and these candles are repeated in the background too. And an additional bonus, obviously, here is that we can relate the size of the candles to like the height of our characters here, right? And then because we see them in the background, we kind of know that this person is going to be taller than us, right? I mean, it's kind of like a simple example, but so that's what we kind of want to do. Like we want to add some things in here, like some, I don't know, like some urns, right? And then use the same kind of thing like in the foreground as well, so that we can relate the two to each other. For human scale, I'm planning to use the character silhouette near the camera, like in the scene. Yes, so I like what you're doing there. However, like it doesn't really matter if we only have a character here, if we then can't correlate that character to something else in the scene, right? I think we need more. Because what you're trying to do here is you're trying to sell the proportions of the gate and like the face here, right? But like this character doesn't really relate to like anything else in the scene, right? So a really cliche thing would be if we have like a character here, right? Like let's say 2 characters here, then we would know immediately like, oh, from the distance, like they are so tiny. Okay, now the scale of everything starts to make sense. It's about like our relationship, or like how, not our relationship, but like how we relate the height of this character to like something that is like very convenient for us to then relate other things to, right? So a character that you add is like a first step, which is good, right? I like that. But I think the scene is gonna need a little bit more than that to really solidify like the scale of everything. That's why I'm saying, you know, something pretty generic, like some pots or like some urns, you know? And then you can kind of have like the same stuff over here, and then, you know, we can start relating things to each other. Because if you only have like one reference point, sometimes that's not enough, right? And also, I think something that I wanted to bring up is because your scene is kind of in terms of the style and the architecture, right? It's going to be like a little bit more foreign to what we're used to. If this was like a stereotypical like Roman palace or like a, I don't know, the Colosseum or something like that, right? Then that would make more sense to us. But because we're kind of doing like this really interesting but eventually like foreign architecture, we need to do a little bit more work to establish the scene, right? That's why I bring these things up. Yeah, especially because you want to make it feel epic, right? Scale and proportions are going to be really, really important. Let's see. Yes, JD16. That is actually also a really important thing, right? The scale of the bricks. That's something that I also wanted to talk about. And again, like it relates to everything else, right? Like if you're trying to really sell the scale of something, right? And like we have our little guy here, then these are like human-sized like blocks, you know? And that's again something that is very hard to relate to for us, because then we're immediately thinking about like the outliers, right? So it's something to think about, like the scale of the bricks too, for sure. Thanks for bringing that up. Unless it's a story of like a giant or like a human trapped in a giant's dome. Well, that's where it gets interesting, right? Because if you really wanted to go with that, which could be happening here too, right? Even then, you kind of have to scale everything so out of proportion that everything is made for a giant rather than a human, right? But you can't do that with like a staircase that seems to be made for like human feet, right? Because it's all about like selling the scale, right? And like selling what you're trying to set up. And if you really go for like something like you're saying, like a giant, right? Like this is a giant's palace or whatever, then everything needs to conform to the giant, not the person. So yeah, keep these things in mind. Yeah, like I knew that it was not an error, right? But we were kind of going with the fantasy of like a giant's dome, right? Because the staircase kind of makes it feel like it's built for humans. So that was pretty clear. It's just the scale of the bricks then needs to conform to that too. Yeah, no, like I think these are going to be very important. Then we have like the scale of the bricks. What else do we discuss? Oh yeah. The human size relatable props. Right? Find something. I think tweaking the size of the bricks is already gonna help a little bit, right? So try to take it step by step. And like if you're gonna go for like a more grand feeling, you're gonna like rejig the scene. I would focus on the big stuff first, like the big fundamental stuff, right? Like changing up the scene layout. That's why I kind of started with that one. Instead of going down, you're going up, right? So I would kind of look at it in this way. Yeah. And this is number 2, and this is number 3, right? That's the way that I would approach it. Because the scene layout, that's gonna have like a big impact on like how you built the scene already, right? So that's gonna take a little bit of work. Number 2, the human scale is something that's gonna take a bit more work because you're gonna have to build like new assets for it, right? And like tweak the texture sizes. And then the perspective distortion is something that you can do all the way at the end because that's like easy to tweak because you're basically just forcing like the field of view a little bit, right? So I would do that like when it comes last in the list of priorities. Yeah. It can be anything, right? I'm gonna write like a couple of examples. But this can literally be any. So candles, chairs, urns, etc. Right? Something that is easy for us that we kind of see on like a day-to-day basis, and it's easy for us to relate to. Yeah. I'm gonna try to make the stair go up and not disturb my composition too much. But I don't know if I can pull it off after progressing too far. Well, the foundations of a piece are more important than like, I mean, I'm gonna sound like pretty forthright here. But like, if you can keep building your scene this way, right? But there's always gonna be something that's gonna feel off about the scene. I think right now you're in a good position where the only thing that you would really need to do, from what I can tell, is change the staircase to go up instead of down, right? You could even like rotate the thing, right? The only thing that you would need to take into account is especially your composition, right? I think you can. It doesn't need. I think the only thing that you could, well, the quickest thing that you could do is shorten the staircase, right? So that, because you don't want to be looking at like a long staircase, but that it feels like you're stepping up to like a pedestal and then have like a big gate like on top of it, right? Let's see. Yeah, you kind of still want to make it feel epic, right? Yeah, I'm sure you can make it work. Like, yeah, definitely. If you want to make this the first focus as well, right? Now that we're talking about it, like this gate needs to become the first focus, right? Like, make it big. Because something that you also need to contend with, right, is that we as humans are attracted to other human faces. So what is always going to happen is you're going to have to disproportionately have to scale something else up if it's not a face, right? In this case, like we're talking about a gate, the gate kind of needs to be larger than the face to kind of compensate for the fact that we as human beings are attracted to faces, right? It also depends on the lighting as well, right? Like you could do some really cool tricks where like the portal is lit up and it's kind of like lighting the head from like the underside or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, you could definitely make this work. Just at this point, like keep tweaking the proportions, right? And if you really want to focus on the gate first, make the gate bigger. Big gate. Let's go. Nah, this is cool stuff though. I like it. I like it. Oh, sorry. Was there anything else that you wanted me to look at? Color and the lighting is not final. Okay, I'm not gonna talk about the color and the lighting. We got the updated portal. Yeah, that portal needs to be way bigger. Come on. Yep. Okay. No, cool. I'll leave it with this then. I'll leave it with this. Also, is the light source coming from the moonlight, hence why it's a little bit blue. The lighting is currently still being worked on, so it could be. Oh, sorry, Adam. Might be good rethinking the scale. Yeah, if it's a temple to a deity, then it's generally built by the worshippers. Who built this and for who was it built are two good questions. Yeah, that's definitely something to think about. For sure. Yeah. It's just to have a look around. I haven't light the closed area before. That's fine. That's fine. You told us that the lighting wasn't final, right? So that's all good. No, best of luck. Yeah. Curious to see where it's gonna go. Keep us up to date. Thanks so much. No problem. Happy to help. Next up, we got Chill Bill. Chill Bill is currently iterating on a little bus stop. A bit. I'm just having a look through like the comments that that Chill Bill is making to see if there's anything that I can help with. The one main thing that I want to talk about is still lighting though. A lot of improvements have already been made, but like the main thing that is kind of concerning, like it's a big word, right? Is this area. Like we're dealing with clipping still, right? So what clipping means is that at this point, like the side of the trolley, like there's no information left there. Like everything is just pure white at this point. So that means that either like the image itself is overexposed, right? That you've tweaked the exposure on the image to kind of make it such. Or that the light is just like way too intense, right? But I would honestly have a look at the exposure first. And I added some references here where it's kind of like a more interesting approach to like some of this, right? Like this is probably like a perfect example of what I would expect from the lighting, right? Instead of being like really harsh, it's more like a softer glow. And it still has a lot of contrast, right? But you don't really want to see like a lot of clipping where you can kind of like the lighting is blown out. So that would be like my main bit of feedback here. I know you're getting close to shipping it. I'm going off a hunch, right? And I'm going off like making an assumption here, but okay, most of the lights were manually done because ray tracing didn't give me the exaggeration that I needed. Okay. In all honesty, if and when I come back to this, I will definitely do that. But my goal right now is to get my portfolio complete before the end of uni. Okay, so this is the hunch that I'm going off for. I think you're trying to rush stuff to get done for uni. That is genuinely not like a good mindset to have. I know that uni might impose like a deadlines of what sort, right? But really consider like, how do I approach this? Like really consider putting in either extra time after school or like after uni whenever the assignment is done, right? So you can publish it now, kind of get your grades for the uni, and then like really polish it, right? Where it's like ready for your portfolio. Because there's still some tweaking that I would do here. And like Adam said as well, this is like on our community chat too, or like in our Discord. grabbing like multiple renders from different angles, breaking down all the assets, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then making like a new ArtStation post for it, and then calling it a day. Yeah. But I'm just trying to be really hesitant about like just rushing out stuff for uni. Because that is fine, right, to a certain degree, but make sure that you then take extra steps to polish it up before you then apply with that same portfolio. So I'm just gonna add that here. So I'm gonna say finish for uni, polish for the industry. That's all I'm gonna say. Like, I need like a little bit more context there, right? But I feel you can definitely like polish this up and like really put like details into it, right? And like take a little bit of extra time to make it like nice. But that's all for now. If you still want to do that after, like put it back up, like ask me for feedback, and then we can talk about it then. And we're gonna switch over to Max. There's probably not gonna be too much that I can help with because this is modeled in Maya, textured in Substance Painter, and rendered in Arnold. And like the question that Max has is like more specific to Arnold. I have a suggestion that I can make, but we'll dive into it in a sec. First of all, this is the render, right? Which looks freaking awesome. I love the style of it. Here's the render where I'm at the moment with all the textures painted. This is great. You know, I love the look of it. Looks great. I would honestly not say that this is rendered. Like, it could have fooled me. But the thing that Max is struggling with, or like is trying out currently, is trying to get black outlines on the flames. I like to add lines floating in space over meshes so I can get outlines of shapes, define edges, and make the scene more loose and sketched. Right now I did that on the flames by making transparent planes over them. But it doesn't feel like the most efficient way. Oh wait. Am I misreading this? Oh, wait. No, JJ16. I think I might be wrong. I think the render that he's talking about is actually just like a hand-painted render, if I'm not mistaken. I'm honestly not sure. Or it might be like hand-painted on top of it, right? Because otherwise... Yeah. You already have like black outlines. So yeah, I'm honestly not too sure. I am gonna go with the assumption that this might be like sort of like an unlit hand-painted kind of thing, right? Which is awesome. I like the look of it. Then to get like the black outlines, since you're kind of doing that on the flames right now, if you want to do that for like all the things in for all the things in your scene, right? Then you would have to do that with oh, it's textured in Substance? Oh yeah, that's right. We saw that in the beginning. Saw him paint the lines. Okay, right. So if you want to get like this black outline done, you would have to do that in like Arnold somehow. There are other ways that you could potentially do it, but I have no idea how to set that up in Arnold. So the suggestion that I was gonna say, right? And this is something that is expensive but can work, is duplicating your geometry, flipping the normals on it, right? So that now the back faces are only being rendered, right? And then scaling it up like slightly, and then you just put like a black texture on that, right? So what we're basically doing is we're getting the entire mesh, we're scaling it up slightly, and then instead of rendering like the outside, we're rendering the inside. Because we don't want to obscure the original mesh, right? We only want to render out like the back sides. So what that is going to do, if we have like this area over here, right? Let's say if we duplicate our geometry here and we scale it up, right? And then we invert the normals, then we're only going to see like the areas that are not going to be obscured by the main mesh, right? And that's exactly what we want. And that allows us to like create like a black outline. Mike is saying in inverse hull. Yep. I don't know if that was the official name for it, but that's awesome. So I'm just gonna write that down so that at least they have like an idea of where to look, right? I've never done this myself. I've seen this shared around by like a couple of people online. You could potentially make that into like a modifier, right? Of some sorts. Well, you're using Maya, so I guess modifiers are out of the picture. It could be quite intensive, right? Because you're basically duplicating like all the geometry. The other way that I would look at it, so the black outlines is the inverse hull method then, right? Again, Mike. Inverse hull is duplicate geo. Inflate that geo. And then invert the normal on it. Or flip faces or whatever. Right, so that's like method number 1. Method number 2, which is probably going to be more performant, but also is going to require like a little bit more investigation, is just doing like a custom shader inside of Arnold. But again, that's a little bit out of my depth. I have never rendered anything in Arnold ever, so I don't even have the slightest clue on how to begin with that. But there must be a way that you can do that. And that's the way that I would approach given these guys like all like an outline. Obviously, option number B here, where you have like a shader in Arnold, like you can just like apply that to like any object and it's done, right? Where like the inverse hull method, you kind of have to do that for like every object individually. And then at some point, if you want to change it, you might have to redo it all again, right? Because there might not be a way to change the thickness otherwise. But yeah, that's my suggestion. It looks awesome though. So great stuff so far. Honestly, the way that you have it now, right, where you have like a separate plane like floating behind the flames, it also works. What you could potentially do, yeah, like why don't you... Okay, maybe option C. I don't know how you built this up, right? So I'm taking a stab in the dark here. But why don't you add a line onto your flames already? Yeah, so the planes, JJ16, like the planes are specifically for the outline, right? So, right now I did the flames by making transparent planes over them and drawing lines on those planes. This doesn't feel like the most efficient way to get lines over the rest of the mesh. So any other suggestion on getting dark outlines and shapes would be really helpful. Oh yeah, if you want to then do that on like every object in your scene, yeah, no, this is not going to be a viable way. No way. Then the inverse hull method is probably gonna be better. So yeah, what they're just trying to get is like just a little bit of an outline on everything. But this would be like my first priority to look into. Because something like this needs to happen on like the shader level. And then if that doesn't work, you can use this method. All right. Thanks, Max. Good luck. I'll share the image with you later on as well for everyone else. I kind of forgot to do that with the last feedback event, so sorry about that, guys. The last one from 2023. Have we already talked about toon shading? In Arnold, it's very easy. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, the shader option, right? That's kind of what I talked about. But I have no clue. I've never used Arnold, so I have no clue. I know that there must be like a shader option somewhere. Yeah, I think that's Max has to dig into that himself a little bit. Yep. Like Sarah's saying, already looking super cool. Yeah, I love the style of it. I mean, says enough, right? That you kind of fooled me. So. You fooled me into thinking that it was like a 2D thing, which is awesome. Okay. Last one for today. Bodhi. Bodhi coming in with the breakdown. See? Love hand-drawn stuff, so I love it. Yeah! It looks awesome. Final update. Hell yeah, Bodhi. This is awesome to see. The prop did take longer than I expected. Look, doesn't matter, right? The time that you took on something, like, pales in comparison to the end result. You know what I mean? Like, you really took... Okay, let me... Okay. Let me do a comparison, right? Just to make it really clear. Da-da-da-da. These renders were already like quite decent as but like you managed to level it up from this, you know, which was already good. Like it was already decent, right? And now we're looking at something like this. You know? I mean, this looks awesome. Like the time and effort that you put into this, like it's just I think it's a reward unto itself, man. Like this is so good. And like I'm gonna be honest, like these aren't even my favorite renders. Like the ones that we saw last time, right? I love them. Like those two in combination. Oh my god. Such a good project that you got on your hands. I love the amount of work that you put into it. I love the amount of detail and the lengths that you go to really sell the world. It's not just a prop, it's a world that we're building now. Which is awesome. Great stuff. Let's see. So anyway, it would be great to hear what you think I can improve on with those two additional renders, especially in what direction I should let her look. I like the head to the side more, but I think in both images it might be boring. I agree. Yeah, I agree. So I am going to make this super easy. The top ones are my favorite. The bottom ones are the ones that I wouldn't use. The reason why I picked this one is kind of because of the dynamic angle, right? Oh, let me get my little pen. So the reason why I like this one is because you got like the head looking back, right? And like that combined with the dynamic angle of the camera makes it feel like she's being chased at the moment, which is great. I love that. I love that feeling. Like, we don't know by what, we don't know by whom, but like, she is under some sort of pressure, right? And then this one, you can think about the sequence of it, right? But you could kind of make this as like, oh, at this point she didn't really know what she was being chased about, right? Or she's not looking back at like the next contestants. And then you can have like the final image be this one, right? But yeah, that's the way that I would play it. This one, I don't know. This kind of has like the vibes of oh god. Like, you know, some of these races where like the cameraman is coming up to like people that are on the bicycles or whatever, right? And like they happen to look at the camera, but it kind of feels like really fake. It doesn't feel natural, this one. And then this one is also kind of cool, right? Like focused in, honed in. But if you then have to combine like the two shots, I would pick this one where she's looking back, and then this one where she's riding alone. So yeah. But I also don't mind this one per se. But you're right, if we were to pick like two ones where she's just looking ahead, it might be a little bit boring, right? So that's why we pick like a top two. So these are like my picks. So yeah, awesome world building. And then the dynamic shot, right? Dynamic chase shot plus the one where she's just like really honed in on the race, right? Yeah, but I wasted time otherwise. I made other scenes I don't use because at one time I wanted to make a race. Yeah, but none of that matters though. You know? Like the creative journey and like the artistic journey that we're on, right? Like it's not going to be a straight line. The amount of scenes that I've done with my medieval scene to get to the point where we're at right now only made it better, right? Because just imagine if you just made those scenes, right? And you decided to use them. The end result might have not been as good as it is right now, right? So none of that stuff is really wasted because it hones your taste for what you actually need to do for the project to make it look really good. And the end result speaks for itself, right? So all the other scenes that you didn't use, don't care, you know? I would honestly use these scenes, use the ones that we looked at like 2 weeks ago when you had the one in where you had the ones in the, where are they? Oh yeah, these guys, right? Where you had the ones in the garage. Use these ones, right? Cut this one out. And maybe cut one of these zoomed in ones out as well. Have a sequence where you're kind of telling a story of like, oh, this person is like really taking like care of like their desert, the desert racing machine, right? And then you see her like, you, depending on what you want to do, right? You could have the action first and then going into the garage, or the garage first and then going into the action. That's up to you. What kind of story you want to tell? But yeah, if you then combine all of these ones, you have a killer project, man. So none of the time is wasted. Don't feel bad about it at all, because it's all in service to the awesome end result that you ended up with. So, great work. Freaking great job. Yeah, otherwise, nothing else to say. The top two ones for me, definitely. And I'm just curious when you're gonna post it and how it's gonna look. Like, I'm just excited for the end result now. And that's about it, you know? Yeah, no, don't ever feel bad about like wasted time, right? If if I need to throw in like a little bit of a comparison, I had a look at like my project graveyard, right? That I've been kind of building up over time. My projects that I never finished are around like, I don't know, 600 gigs or something like that. You know, and they have like a wide range, right? In like a ton of different fields, but yeah, it's all in service to getting better at the thing that you do want to do in the end, right? And sometimes it takes time, you know? Yeah. Awesome job. Let's look at the full renders, right? Because I kind of had to crop them to fit on the template. Yeah, let's see. So we got these two. Nope, that's not the one. I picked the two opposing ones. Let's see. So this one, then we got this one, right? Which is kind of looking back. That's awesome. Yeah, just honestly, like really well done. So you rendered it in Blender, the characters are made with Character Creator, and the base cloths are from Marvelous Shop, and the environment is Megascans. Yep. Freaking awesome presentation. You went above and beyond to sell a prop, right? And I think this is gonna really shine through if you put this on your portfolio, because I'll be honest, I don't think there's like a lot of other people that will go through these lengths to quote unquote just sell a prop, right? You're going above and beyond, which is fucking awesome. Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. And yeah, it took a little bit long, right? But who cares? Who cares? You got something to be proud of. Oh, Bodhi, random question. Have you sent like updates to Victor Boto, like the owner from the concept? Because I think, look, if this was my concept, I would be freaking ecstatic to see these things. Or are you just waiting for the final post and then link it to him or something like that? Because I would be really happy to see this. All right. Hey-oh, Mr. J. Just that one time when I finished the high poly, but I send it to him when I'm finished. Hell yeah. Yeah. Okay. Keep me in the loop what his reaction is going to be as well, because I'm just curious, you know? I'm just curious. I would be stoked to see this. Okay. No, thanks everyone for posting your work. Thanks Antonio, Ricardo, Kotar, Chill Bill, Max S, and Bodhi. Awesome work. It's always nice to see like the weekly progression, right? We didn't have like a Whip Wednesday last week, but 2024 is here, baby. So if you need like more regular feedback, and if you aren't a part from the community yet, become a part of the community by going to the link in the description below. And yeah, for all the people that have posted their work, freaking awesome job. And I'll be happy to look at more next week. But for this week, I'm signing out. Thanks all so much. Have a nice evening. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye. I kind of feel like I just said hi and bye, Mr. J. So thanks for popping in.